Already, this video is about accessible mental health or mental health in general. I'm a huge advocate for good mental health, and good mental health starts with you. Now, before I get into the details, the images, I use most of the images via Unsplash, so I made sure I put that on there, and it's in the slides as well. Before I get into the details, please note that I'm not an evidence-based medical practitioner. I have never been an evidence-based medical practitioner. The information is being shared on an as-is basis. The information is not going to be useful for you in a crisis situation. In a crisis situation, you should call 911. If you live in, I would say, the westernized part of the world, then there are crisis lines. You can Google a particular crisis line in your situation. I'm pretty sure there are crisis lines in other parts of the world. I personally have not looked into this, but there are crisis lines in most of the North American cities at the very least. Last but not least, I'm not liable in any way if the information outlined in these slides or in the video reel ends up causing some problems. The intention is to enable your well-being, and I have to just put the disclaimer. Now, the reason why I made this slide is because sometimes I come across individuals who are going through some issues, as we all do, and there are some patterns, and one of the patterns that I've noticed is I may come across somebody and the thing kind of goes like this. There's like a lot of issues, and I'm sympathetic, so I'd stop by and talk to people. I don't mind. But sometimes the conversation goes like this. You come across the individual, and then there's like literally like there's like 3 dozen issues in that conversation. I'm just listening, and the person is not gauging your interest. They're not seeing what your perspective is on these issues. So their mind is pretty much set, but they're kind of literally going from like many different issues to sometimes there's like more than, there's a lot of issues. It's like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It keeps going on and on. And there's like a lot of finger pointing. There's some victim mentality. And I would think there's some mental health issue going on there. If there was just one issue or two, you could like have a reason, the discussion based on reason. But, that's one pattern I've noticed. Now, obviously, people have like, everyone goes through something in their life, on different gradients or spectrums. Each one of these things is spectrum. Each one of the mental health specific things are a spectrum. So depression, anxiety, to other mental health situations on the DSM, from a DSM perspective. I do not know actually what DSM means, but I know that DSM is the mechanism via which mental illnesses, I believe, are categorized. The DSM is the framework to which the literature defines what ought to be or what ought not to be classified as a mental illness, and the range, and at least it puts a pulse on it. So like things like autism are a very wide spectrum. I'm going on a random example, but it would be something like the DSM literature, which would classify what ought to be classified as autism, and what is the range, the way, like, the actual spectrum on which something like this could start to get defined. So that's like one aspect of why I'm making the following video. The other aspect is what's on the screen. And growing up, I would say this, I'm thinking superstition is part of almost all the cultures in the world. I would be saying the same thing if I was growing up in China, I'm sure, or somewhere else like Papua New Guinea for that, or maybe Eastern Europe, right? I don't know. I don't live there, but I'm not saying it's endemic to one part of the world. I happen to be growing up in a part of South Asia, And so I don't mean this as a broad brushstroke. Maybe it was just the subculture I was part of, but I saw a lot of superstition around me. There was palm reading, there was numerology. People would literally write some numbers or some verses on a piece of paper, crumple it up and eat it, swallow it with a glass of water. I've seen the burning of red chilies, the round ones, not these ones, like the South Asian chilies that make the chili, crushed chili powder. You put that on the stove and, you kind of let them cool, and then you kind of do this on top of your head to ward off the evil eye, kind of, and the more smoke they kind of, then you put them back on the stove, and the more smoke is coming out of that, the more evil the eye was. There's obviously the burning of incense, which may or may not be on topic. There are other things, like you can Google these terms: AMIL Baba, Amil Baba. There's the superstitious stories, obviously, with in the folklore, with individual of a particular gender, in this case female, who have their feet backwards, and they are basically they try to like they're hags, or like in the South Asian term is churel. Basically, a lot of superstition, and this is actually literally this is just I guess snapshot. And again, I'm not saying this to do a broad brushstroke. I'm just sharing my experiences. And here's why I'm sharing my experiences. I saw a lot of suffering. I saw suffering in the random order of individuals abusing alcohol, substance abuse, chronic substance abuse, other addiction issues, tobacco, cigarettes, what have you. I saw individuals abusing their relationships or continuing to be in an abusive relationship, anger issues, violence of different types. So I noticed the use of violence instead of empathizing or communicating with somebody. And basically a lot of gossiping, wasting time, and blame game. And so the reason why I'm sharing this is because I think this is tied in with this. So when something was not working here, the default mechanism, it seemed like, was to do this, something in this category, in the superstition category. And things were not working because that loop is not working. So this is why I categorized this slide, and I'm sharing from my experience. This is, again, not a broad brushstroke. I'm just saying that the issues that I was observing growing up were not getting solved because the mechanisms to solve them were not working. But I guess, oh, that's the slide. So I guess people around me kept doing this because that's the only way that was known. As well, when there was an issue and you talk to somebody, they would only operate from their sphere of what they know, and they would most probably end up giving you bad advice, even though that may not be their intention. But they would say, go talk to this person or that person, and that may be grounded more so in superstition than something that had a higher probability of working. So I don't know how, but I started gravitating more towards reason. I don't know why this bullet is smaller than the others, but that's not intentional. So first of all, the definition of reason, I got this from Merriam-Webster's, which is a website. When you Google definition of words, it's either dictionary.com or this. These are the two that come up. And these are some of the definitions of reason from there's a noun-based definition section, then a verb-based. So I just got the definition from the first section. And, it's something that makes facts intelligible. It's I'm reading from the slides, and it's an explanation of something that there's always there's always a logical explanation of things that happen around you. At least that's what I find. There are some phenomena that we don't understand as it relates to our environment and the wider cosmos, but uh, I believe it's the application of the scientific method is, in my opinion, the best way of understanding things. It very well could be the case that there are going to be things that we may not, may take us a long time to find out about, or some things we may not even find out about, like how maybe, like, I don't know, I can't come up with a good examples, like maybe the multiverse, or um, what's in a higher dimensional space, things like that. But I want to stick to the topic, and because this is a topic about mental health, I think reason is tied parts and parcel with. Oh, I was going to talk about the scientific principle, but okay, let me. I haven't rehearsed this, so this is my first take. But um, yeah, anyway, so I was somehow I started gravitating towards reason, and I don't know when this shift happened for me, but listening to Richard Dawkins was definitely a pivotal moment in my life, and I don't know when this really started. It started somewhere in my 20s. Um, I've always been a bit of a doubter in like from a perspective of skepticism. So I'm not going to talk about all of that stuff because I just want to have people. I just I think people should take the agency over their own well-being, and in the domains of mental health, I think talking to an evidence-based practitioner is the only way to go. So that is the gist of my video today, and I'm going to stick to that topic. So building up on reason, I believe that everything that happens to us as individuals and as people in as part of a dynamic is governed by what goes on in our brain, with the nerves in our body, in our system overall, forming an extension of the brain, the eyes, the sensory perception, sensory perception system, the what's it called, the extension of the central nervous system throughout the body. Um, these senses power everything. So the mind makes up the brain, and the brain makes up the mind. So this is from there's a psychotherapist who writes books on this topic. And hey, so that's not my quote. And I think I'm in, again. So the disclaimer still stands. I'm coming at this from a very non-clinical, completely non-clinical perspective. But the things I can think of, and this is not a comprehensive list, relationships are a big part of, and in random order, relationships are a big part of what goes on in our brain. So relationships are obviously of many different types. I could find, I didn't do a comprehensive listing of the different kinds of relationship. I should have put a picture here from childhood, because the childhood memories do impact a lot of what goes on in our brain. Um, yeah, it's and teachers, the people who we look up to, that has a big impact on what goes on in our brain as well. So the relations are a big part of this dynamic. Then it's the environment. It's the physical, tactical, sensory, also digital, virtual. Books are a part of your environment. Books are a very rich source of information. Plus, in a wider sense, the culture you're part of, the subculture, even the memes hold in your brain. Memes not from the perspective of cat pictures or something like that, but memes in more like a Richard Dawkins sense. I think he coined the term as well. So like, what are these? I guess I should look up the definition of memes, but what are these clusters of ideas? What are those representation of the different ideas that you actually hold in your brain or your mind? And that's a big part of what goes on in your reality. And obviously, I should have taken culture out of here because it's right. Culture, I think, plays a big part. All of these do, but the culture you're in plays a big part in how you look at the world. And that's obviously in a kind of like a fluid form in our global reality, because increasingly we're so integrated. There's constantly media coming from another part of the world into your reality. People actually physically go into other places, interacting with people from different part of the world. Companies are increasingly global in their scope and nature. So culture or the subculture within that culture plays a big part of what goes on in your brain. I'm not going to do an exhaustive, I don't know much about the brain anyways, but basically your brain is a collection of cells, and these cells in the brain, as you may or may not know, is these are a specific kind of cells that are called neurons. They're spread throughout your body as well, but most of them are in the brain. Depends on the size of the brain. It's anywhere from, I think, 80 billion to 100 billion with a B in your brain. And you have the brain kind of like in a folded structure. And the neurons are in these cylindrical columns within the brain. And there are different parts of the brain responsible for different things. You actually have, I think, 3 brains there, or 2. Is it 2 or 3? There's the very primitive brain, the brain stem, and then you have, I believe, the this, what's it called? Is it the primitive brain from the time we were lizards? And then you have the monkey brain, which grew on top of that, which is the primate brain. And within these regions, there are different components that regulate different things. So the vision system is in the back, I think, something like that. So it kind of obviously is attached to the eyes. And the motor system is, I don't know exactly know where it is. The system responsible for planning and abstract thinking, I believe, it's like more in the front section, prefrontal cortex. So this is like standard neuroscience 101. Obviously, there are many other functions, and we're learning more about this as time passes by. But everything is governed by what goes on in your brain. And again, so the brain makes the mind makes the brain. The central building block of the mind, I think, again, I'm not a medical practitioner, the central building block of the mind is a memory. And as Jeff Hawkins has said in his book on intelligence, it is from memories that we associate the patterns from which consciousness arises. I think that's a very beautiful quote. I think there is a lot of information packed in that one statement, if I should say from my uneducated point of view. I think I could be wrong, and maybe Jeff Hawkins is wrong as well. But the Jeff Hawkins uses the term consciousness. I just like to use the term cognition, and I use cognition as an umbrella term. But basically, memories impact everything in your mind. And we see this over and over again. Memories drive everything. And if you can take the agency over, I mean, sorry, not if you can, if once you take the agency over your well-being and you invest the time to optimize your psychological well-being, then resolving and coming to terms with the problem set of memories, in my opinion, is, I could again be wrong about all of this, but that's like one of the key things you can do. And I think we all carry some baggage in this sphere, the baggage in terms of beliefs and ways of thinking, and memes, stuff you may have heard somebody in your circle surrounding say repeatedly, and you kind of adopted it, and you never really questioned it as you grew up, and you just kept repeating it, and you're just repeating these things without really thinking about what you're saying or how you even think. You may not be saying it, but you may think something, and it may not be true, and it may actually be doing you harm, the way you look at the world, right? And the basis of something like that is in a memory. It's in a memory somewhere in your mind, in this case. And to the best of our ability, like based on what we know, the mind is enabled by the brain. So there's some physical memory somewhere that creates this mental kind of model of your view of the world and yourself, and you as somebody in that world, how you operate in that world. But if there's some problem memories in your mind, then they will hold you back. And these could be in any domain. It could be in random order, some fear, some phobias, some trauma maybe, could be prejudice. You maybe have prejudiced views against individuals from a particular background, or maybe the way they look, or something else. And these set of kind of, I guess these memories really, whatever set of memories are driving this behavior are what could be holding you back. And in some, I don't know what percentage of the situation or cases, may actually be making you sick. You may be getting sick because of your memories. And this is why I want to take a couple of minutes in my from a non-scientific perspective and share my thoughts on this. Again, I keep doing the disclaimer because I don't want to give anyone bad information, because this is a very serious issue or a topic. And I'm not a doctor. I've never went to medical school. So this brings me to evidence-based. I think this is good timing. And evidence-based from the Wikipedia page means evidence-based practice is the idea that occupational practices ought to be based on scientific evidence. So it's a very succinct definition. And if we go back to the first couple of slides where I was talking about the superstitious set of practices, that is exactly what evidence-based practice is not. Because there's no evidence to prove that those things work. Nobody has gotten well by having their palm read in the world. Nobody has gotten well by talking to like a black, like magic person. Nothing against the people who do this for fun, or I don't want to comment on that, but there's no proof that these things work. Nobody's been made. So yeah, I'll keep the examples to that. Nobody's gotten well by ingesting something written on a piece of paper. These things don't work. So that is what evidence-based practice is not. Evidence-based practice is solely based on scientific evidence. And I think it's important that once you talk to an evidence-based practitioner meaning somebody who practices, that the profession, the skill that will make you, in this case, better, or should, that person has to come from an accredited institution. And I personally don't know how institutions get accredited, but they must have to perform at a certain level to be accredited by a well-known institution. And it's a set of practices that one has to maintain and adhere to in order to get accredited. So if I, for example, decide to start a university today, I call it Ideal University, and I'm like, I'm going to teach all of these things here. And if it's not accredited by an official institution, then it's not really, legitimacy is, I guess, the thing. So I don't know how things get accredited, but there are certain things that work. And based on you hitting a certain criteria, set of criteria for your institution, you may or may not get accredited. So basically what I'm saying is your practitioner should come from an accredited institution. If they're not, then you should not be spending time with them, right? I'm not talking about stuff like yoga and meditation and stuff like that. I think there are um, benefits towards, just sitting down in silence and moving the body in a gentle, calm way, or Tai Chi at that. My comments should not be a wider blanket statement against everything like that. But stuff like mental health, you should get it checked by somebody who has gone to school through an accredited institution. So when we were talking about evidence-based practice, the term scientific method came up. And I've put the links to all of these terms directly pointing to their page on Wikipedia. Uh, from my uneducated perspective, the scientific method means, this is like really the 6-step, I believe, process. But I think that it's really a simple, at least in like and from a theoretical or like a conceptual perspective, it's a simple thing to grasp. You have an hypothesis. You test that hypothesis by conducting experiments. And doing so will either acknowledge or refute one of the ways. It would either refute your hypotheses or it would lend credence, I think that's the word, credence, to your hypotheses. So it's either a yes or a no. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle. We don't know. Further testing is required. But the thing is really simple. And uh, the scientific method, one of the things is, so you have a series of steps that you conduct, right? Then you document that. And so say you come up with some kind of framework and you follow the scientific method in order to be able to do that. Then you can take those set of instructions and you can send it halfway around the world, or on the other side of the world, and you can have a group of individuals conduct the same set of steps, and the outcome is going to be exactly the same. So we know from evidence that the set of instructions work. So there's basically, from a conceptual point of view, it's actually pretty simple. So how like there's obviously uh, things in place in order to be able to uh, have this work. But the central idea of the scientific method is really simple. And I just shared the gist of that right here. So coming back to mental health, what I think in most cases, not all, what individuals should do is talk to their general practitioner, general evidence-based practitioner. So a doctor who's gone through an accredited university, uh, your family doctor in most cases should have gone through an accredited university. And hopefully your family doctor doesn't have superstitious beliefs or things of that nature that may be to your detriment. And I'm not talking about homeopathy or what else. There's like a lot of things in the domain of pseudoscience, and uh, practitioners claim this is based on the scientific method when it's not. So you gotta like do your, basically I'm talking about medicine and how it's practiced in the majority of the world. Now there may be, that's gonna be off topic, so I'm not gonna talk about that. There may be cultural practices that we may not know about. There may be, certain kind of fungi could actually be very useful for us, or what else? Maybe some herb or something like that. But it has to roll through. It has to go through the body of scientific. Like there has to be a scientific method applied to it. Only we understand how that works for it to be. And then there's like a fairly stringent process in order to be able to make sure that the thing that's being recommended to a wider population doesn't in fact have negative symptoms or consequences. So that's a thing on the side. But to come back to the topic, if there's something going on with your mental health, then the person, in my opinion, the first person you should talk to is, this is not a blanket statement. This is not for chronic issues. This is not for crisis situations, going back to the disclaimer. Let's say you're feeling a little sad, or anxious, or, you're concerned about what's going on with things around you. Maybe you're in a bad relationship. Uh, all of these things, and, and other uh, scenarios like this will have an impact on your psychology. And so the first person you should talk to is the evidence-based practitioner, general practitioner. And the general practitioner should, or will most probably, then make the call with regards to if you should go the route of therapy. I should have put psychiatry here as well, because some issues may be very chronic. So instead of actually sending somebody for therapy, the practitioner would say, no, you need to talk to a psychiatrist. Maybe you need some, you need to go on some medication to calm you down, or some other things going on. So that would be in the domain of psychiatry, which I don't know much about. I haven't had a lot of experience in that domain. But I think that should be on the slide. But yeah, I can speak a little bit about there's many different kinds of therapies in general, like talk therapy. I'm talking about talk therapy. So talk therapy, and this should probably be a slide by itself here. Talk therapy is the way the name implies. It is also based on evidence-based practice. And I think I personally benefited from talk therapy a lot. And the reason why I benefited from talk therapy is because this is not, this whole thing is not, I'm talking from like a patient perspective. I'm not, again, a medical practitioner. I never claimed to be. But I think talk therapy worked for me because I, one, stuck with it. I was very patient with myself, and with myself, because it takes time to build the trust and the professional relationship, and a certain level of this kind of like it's a space based on trust, because you're letting somebody into your mind, and that's a very intimate space. And um, uh, what else can I say about that? Like, so there are some issues that may be impacting your quality of life, and I think a lot of I actually couldn't say, because I haven't spoken to many patients or uh, individuals who seek therapy in the first place. But I think the mind is like it's got like, I don't know how many, lots of memories. I don't know how many memories are stored in the mind, and they're all stored in the what we refer to as the unconscious or the subconscious. Uh, Not all of my memories are in my conscious sphere at all times. That would not make sense. We wouldn't be able to navigate this reality in a structured sense if that was happening. So, however, the memories are still there. There are these living, I think, I'm not sure if they are living things or not, but there are these things in our brain. They're sitting somewhere in our brain and somewhere in our mind, and the memories do impact our overall self. They impact our well-being, how we operate in this world, how we look at the world in the first place, how we move, how we talk, and how we behave. Going back to the talk bit, I think Steven Pinker, Dr. Steven Pinker said, how you talk represents how you think, something to that effect. I think there's some truth to it. How people talk could very well be indicative of the kind of thought processes going on in somebody's mind. And that's just one thing, right? So basically, the brain, the mind is a collection of all of these memories, and um, the memories, I don't think they are easily traceable. So you can't expect to go into therapy, and this is more like functional, and expect boom, 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 right? Hey, therapist, I'm talking to you. I've been coming here for like 2 months now. Why don't you fix my problems? It doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, fortunately, it doesn't work that way. So you need to, I, I got to keep doing the disclaimer because I don't want to give bad information, even though that is not my intention. I may end up giving bad information. Uh, so, and I think from the perspective of like the dynamic, therapies are of different kinds. There's like now therapy based on virtual reality. There's artificial intelligence being used for in certain situations. Um, but in a kind of like the human to human dynamic on this, like, well, say if you are, well, pre-COVID, you'd sit in a room and you talk to your therapist. It's all talk-based therapy, but now you're doing it through some electronic medium. But from your perspective, you are sharing the things that you want to share, and you don't, may or may not know why. And a good therapist is going to, I don't I don't know anything about psych or how the mind is really structured. There's different kind of psychologies at play. So I wouldn't be able to do justice here at all. But a good therapist, I think, coming from a very totally uneducated perspective, would trace your memories to be able to see however your mind or mental models are fashioned. They would guide, they would ask questions in regards to, like, tell me more about this or tell me more about that. And how does this make you feel? And what was the dynamic here? What was going on here? So it takes a certain level of skill to be able to navigate that uh, terrain of your cognitive architecture, if that even makes sense. I have no idea what I'm talking about at this point. But yeah, I guess without going to all the details, uh, you, again, to recap, you need to invest your time. You need to show up. You should not miss sessions. You should need to be really patient with yourself. You need to be patient with your therapist. They are human too, so maybe they didn't get enough sleep the night before. So 1, 2 sessions like that, so I would say the first 6 to 8 months, be patient and keep just maintain your sessions and go from there. I've been very fortunate. I had no issues, but I just stuck with it. And yeah, I've stuck with it, and I would probably do therapy for the remainder of my life because it's such a transformative um, framework, or what's the right word? It's a really useful. Something popped up on my screen. It's a really useful tool in your toolkit, if I may refer to it as that, because I don't know of any other mechanism to be able to resolve what is going on in my mind. Your mind, again, I think, is this maze of memories and whatever set of things memories make, and somehow all of this kind of is connected and boots up in some fashion, some way, which is allowing me to operate the way I am. Uh, and if there was some breakdown in this chain or this way at some point, maybe because of biophysical reasons or something to that effect, or some injury, or maybe it was some memory that was, or set of memories that were something happened there, then I would be behaving differently, right? So sometimes it's both. Um, and yeah, I forgot what I was going to say, but basically, this is what works, in my opinion. And I think therapy works. I really believe therapy works. 100% of the evidence may not posit that it, like, it's not everything in all, because therapies are of many different kinds. So I don't know what the evidence would suggest in each and every one of these situations, but I think there's something very transformative talking to a trained evidence-based practitioner. Again, I should probably look more into the foundations of what makes, what are the precepts, what are the building blocks of human psychology, um, with starting with pediatric psychology and psychiatry, going all the way up to, like the continual formation of the brain, and like from that point onwards. But again, to come back to the topic, therapy, it just is a very effective toolkit, if I may refer to it as that. It's a very effective mechanism. I wish more people did this. This is the world I want to help create. Uh, Whatever I can do, and I'm not the only one. There's many individuals working in this arena to make mental health more accessible. AI could actually play a very pivotal role in this space as well, and we're already seeing good work done by companies like Woebot, WOEBOT.io. I'm sure there are other applications now, but this human and machine combination, I could see it being very useful to help bring more care in the world. Um, what's the next slide? I think this is it. Yeah, so this is what I want to talk about. I'm gonna keep it to this. You can look more into the Wikipedia page for evidence-based practice, the scientific method itself. Reason is a big part of everything that I shared today. This is not reason. This is not based on reason. And reason and the scientific, like when we talk about the scientific method, it's something that's based on empirical evidence, and the mechanism by which you come to these conclusion is that you reason about the thing in front of you. And reason is a topic I need to learn, like spend more time understanding. But I can kind of conceptualize what reason means in my mind, and say a lot of folks are saying something, right? Could be 100,000, 10,000, million, maybe more, and they're all saying this. But if that thing is not grounded in reason, then it's not true. Um, and there's many examples of something like this. But it's just the thing is not based on reason, so it cannot, there cannot be an outflow, or it cannot like move from that point onwards. Um, Whereas if something is grounded in logic, and it's a way of you can replicate it. Going back to the example I shared, that's like the ideal example. But if you can replicate that mechanism somewhere, then you are now, you can now reason about that. I'm gonna not talk about reason. As you can see, I'm struggling with this, but I can kind of sense what this means. Um, but for me, it's mostly come. I know this is not reason. I think that's my start. I know all of the stuff is not reason, and it's not reason because I saw again a lot of people suffering growing up. And so if that was, if those individuals were actually leveraging reason in order to be able to, what's going on here, right? And if you reason through that set of conditions or problem, then the outcome or the thing you will, actions you will take would, if they were grounded in reason, then then there should have, like theoretically speaking, less of what was going on, right? So there's other things that kind of kick in the domain of neuroplasticity. It takes time. Rewiring this takes time and takes a lot of patience, and it takes a lot of consistent effort. I don't know much about neuroplasticity, but they say it takes 4 years to change like your brain in a radical way. Habit formation is something, I think that the term of 21 days is floated. So 21 days in terms of adopting a new habit. I guess it can take a little longer if you're trying to shed a habit. It's contingent on how chronic something like that is in the domain as you're trying to shed it, your environmental conditions, and other things potentially. But yeah, so habit formation is another thing, but I think the general, this is not medical advice. None of this is medical advice, by the way. But if you want to change your brain in a pretty major way, then you got to give yourself time, and you got to do the work. You got to have consistent effort going in, and that would help with the enablement of a new brain. The theory prior to neuroplasticity was that the brain is very staticky, and most of it is based on genetics, epigenetics, and yeah, that's it. Yeah, you are what you are. You're always going to be like that. And neuroplasticity takes all that and said, no, people can change, and they can change their brain, and they can change in remarkable ways provided they put in consistent effort, right? You got to take action. You got to move your limbs. You got to take action towards what you want to change and go from there. To come back to this the theme of today, if you're going through something, don't suffer. Why you're suffering? And don't call your friends, don't keep calling your friends or your family members, expecting them to provide a solution. By the way, I'm not talking about any one person here. So if somebody I know may be watching this, I really am not talking about any one individual. That being said, I have personally come across more than a number of individuals, and this is why I'm making this video, and also my personal I guess struggles. Um, so the I there are, I would say, I got to be careful about what I say next, but I would think most of the struggles are in the avoidable category, right? Depends on where you live. I happen to live in the western part of the world, and there's a lot of freedoms. And I'm actually really lucky. I live in Canada because most of the healthcare facilities are free. I have to pay for my therapy, but I totally am gonna do that. And I was very, very lucky though. I found therapy in my price point, which was quality in every sense of the word imaginable. I'm really grateful for that service. But but what I was saying was, to come back to what I was saying, I'm not talking about any one individual. I just have, I think a lot of these struggles are in the avoidable category. And the mistake I see some individuals making is they keep talking to their friends or somebody they think can help them, or like the loop I mentioned. Sometimes you come across individuals, they would talk about these 10, 20, 30 things in a 30-minute time span or less. And they're very different topics. But from the person's perspective, it seems like it's just all one narrative. And I don't know. So I think right now it's COVID. COVID is putting pressure on humans because the business may not be going as well, or who knows what kind of problems that's creating as a consequence. Maybe the relationship is taking a hit as a result. If there are children involved, and obviously the children are in that dynamic. So there's a whole set of problems, and I've said this before. I keep saying it. Please do not keep talking to your friends, your family members, even they're not trained. Even if your significant other is trained as a therapist, I would say, I actually, in that case, I don't know. I would, if my partner was a therapist, I would probably find another therapist, because then it would like remove those personal feelings, and it would be a clinical thing, right? Uh, so you just so and that's the way to go, in my opinion. But again, I keep repeating this. Don't waste time. Make the call, talk to your practitioner, and go for the first session and stick with the sessions. And amongst some of the individuals that I talked to, I can't obviously say who, uh, that would be a severe breach of my trust, or their trust in me. I've never done that. I will never do that. Um, yeah, some individuals I talk to, they make the call after just like talking, there's some encouragement. Like, I don't time this, but this is based on very limited amount of experience. But I find individuals who make the call, their mental health starts, in my opinion, starts improving, versus individuals who some reason don't make the call, and they're still stuck in that loop, whatever is going on in their mind. They acknowledge that there's a problem, but they don't talk to an evidence-based practitioner, or they don't do anything in the domain of evidence-based practitioners, period. They are, how should I say this without making certain things look bad, because that's not my intention. They're either going the uh, superstitious route, or they are avoiding the problem altogether, or they are going the spiritual route exclusively. There's like, people experience spiritualism in different ways. Some people just look at a tree in the middle of the forest and they have a spiritual experience. And I don't want to go into that tangent right now, but what I'm saying is, um, in my opinion, if you're trying to improve your mental health, you should talk to an evidence-based practitioner. Make the call. Make the call. It's the first calls can be a little, can anxiety can creep up. Maybe you want to have somebody, maybe you can ask a friend to come along, or somebody who you trust, right? They won't necessarily sit with you in the session, but they can go with you to that location, wait in the lobby, or, well, right now it's going to be all COVID, right? So maybe you need some moral support to get to that level. Um, But yeah, please do not keep talking to your friends expecting them to solve your problem. And that's not gonna, that's actually, you're wasting your time, you're wearing your friends out. In fact, if the friend or well-wisher does end up listening to you, and sorry, if they end up giving advice to you, that could be bad advice for you, which would make your situation worse. So that's it. That's all I have to say. I don't want to close on that note necessarily. So I would say, if I could share one thing, please take care of your well-being. Uh, don't do the things that spike up your, get rid of the work towards getting rid of the negative stimuli, the things not serving you, the negativity, the negative stimuli, the new things like news. What else? Um, Thoughts, belief systems. I don't mean this in as a like a criticism of something. Belief system in the terms of like, well, this is the way the world is, and that's it. That's always being like this, is always going to be like that. What if your belief system is not true, right? And how much of a disservice would you be doing yourself if you believed in something which had absolute no basis in medical science or science in general? And this is a broad spectrum, all the way from, this is the way things are, that they're always going to be like this, or there's some giant conspiracy, or this kind of people are like that, all of them are like this, right? And I think we're doing ourselves a huge disservice. This is just a sample of some of the things that individuals may do, but we end up doing ourselves a huge disservice when we think in these terms. And let's be 100% honest, I have also may have been there, like 15, 20 years. In fact, I've put content out there acknowledging some of my personal mistakes. Luckily for me, knock on wood, things may or may not have become as chronic, but somehow I knew that whatever is going to work is going to work, based if it's based on reason and it's based on the scientific method. Overall, I don't know how the universe works, and that's another conversation, right? So I'm going to refrain from commenting on it. I just know that I've had a very good life. I'm very fortunate. I've had very good surroundings and environments around me. Uh, the only time I really truly suffered in life is when I, one, stopped working out consistently, started eating a lot of food on top of that, and I stopped managing my time, and I did the finger pointing. So I played a victim game. There could be other things as well, some habits, some chronic habits. So I would say these 4 to 6 things, doing them, or in some cases not doing them in terms of well-being. I didn't take care of myself, so that would be the things I didn't do. And I was doing the things that were not contributing to my well-being. So it's no wonder that I suffered during that time. Fortunately for me, this is becoming a longer video, but I was able to stage some interventions myself. And for me, the thing that really worked, and everyone's different, for me, the thing that really worked was my connection to the library. I've always maintained a connection to the library. Literally, I go to the library. Even today in the COVID, I book the books online, and it's a contactless delivery system. But I just went to the library and read a lot of books, and reading the books gave me it was like my compass. I once I read about something, I could then go to Google. Sometimes it's just as easy as with a Google search. I am feeling like this, or I have this kind of symptom, physiological or psychological. Um, Sometimes you get bad advice on the internet, so you got to watch your sources as well. So the sources I select overwhelmingly are from the perspective from an evidence-based background. in almost all of the cases, right? Unless somebody's teaching things like I mentioned, Tai Chi or yoga or some breath work. Oh, by the way, it's right here, right? Breath work. So yeah, unless it's in the domains like DAC, evidence-based it is. So yeah, these are some of the things I did. I believe I'm in a really good place right now, psychologically. No one's perfect. There's stuff I'm working on as well. Some interpersonal stuff, right? Sometimes there's negativity, and it's a kind of like a dynamic. You can't really just kind of totally distance yourself, but you also don't want to tolerate that. So you've got to be firm, yet keep a window open, keep a door open, right? So that it's not like complete delineation, if that's the right even word. So it's all on a case by case basis, but um, you know, I'm going to close on the note from Kamal Ravikant's book, Rebirth. I'm surprised I remember this, but it's last year I read the book. And one of the quotes from the book is, if you loved yourself, what would you do? Right? If you loved yourself, what would you do? So if you're going through something, you feel like you're going through something, or you just need to somebody to listen to you who could assist you. It's not the regular thing, you just want to like something happen at work. It's benign, somebody brushed off your idea in a team meeting on Zoom or something like that. It doesn't matter on Zoom or in person. I'm saying because of COVID. Somebody brushed off your idea, and you can talk to a friend about that, and it's going to help you make it better. But if it's something more chronic in any domain or any situation, then you need to make the call and talk to a practitioner. So again, for the third or fourth time, if you loved yourself, what would you do? I love myself. And in the domain of my mental health, I have and I will continue talking to evidence-based practitioners. Alrighty. I do want to share this thing, but I kind of want to keep it on topic, and the videos become slightly longer. But I'm not going to talk about this, but here's like a big portion of what I do. I operate from the following framework, and I call this the architectural foundation for enabling the basics. This is a proposed model. Again, disclaimer, I am not a mental health practitioner. Somebody's calling me. I have no idea who's calling me. But yeah, this is my framework. So again, I got to keep doing the disclaimer, but if you notice, this is the base. And I believe half of the battle is just maintaining a positive mindset. And the same part of that equation, the other part of that equation is to keep negativity at bay, right? Just barrier, and keep it way beyond, away from you. Avoid as much as you can negativity, senseless stimuli like excessive news and stuff. Like I barely watch any news, or I don't even go through CNN or BBC or anything like that unless I have to. Like I'd read the occasional article, and most of them are in astronomy or something to do with cosmology or science or something like that. For science and math and other subjects, the BBC, this is off topic, BBC does a very good job, I gotta say, for putting content like that. CBC also does a very good job. Fox News is, they always have Dr. Michio Kaku on their show, and they're interested in, so we gotta acknowledge when somebody's doing things related to education, you gotta acknowledge the good as well. But everything else, this happened here today, that happened here, I just avoid it. So this is my framework. There's a fair bit of delayed gratification, but not so much for the past couple of weeks. I wake up and I eat my oatmeal first versus doing my morning routine. So I don't want to sound hypocritical. But otherwise, there's a fair bit of gratification. Like I'm not sitting and watching hours and hours of, I barely watch Netflix. I'd watch maybe 2 movies a week. I do watch on average, I would say 2 minutes to half an hour worth of YouTube, but most of it is educational. It's on farming, or it's on, again, astronomy or cosmology in general, the universe, science, solar system, things like of that nature, relationships, parenting, not exactly in that order. Yeah, right? So yeah, then it comes down to the 3 pillars. So regular sleep, regular exercise, and quality nutrition. I'm getting really good at this. In fact, today I went for a nice walk. It was brisk, the sun was out, and it was just a perfect day to get exercise and come back and eat some quality nutrition. Sleep's becoming very good. My sleep got really better because I invested at least 3 solid years in psychotherapy. And during this time, this is one thing I forgot to mention. There will come a time when you're dealing with like problematic memories, and when you do, it has an impact on your physiology. It's really weird, the hold that certain memories may have on us. And when I was dealing with the complex set of memories with my therapist, my 2 things happened. One, my sleep patterns were all over the place. Particularly when I went like deeper into certain memories, I was sleeping on average 10 to 11 hours a day. And I would sleep into the day, like I would wake up at noon in some instances, or even 1 p.m. Then it got really bad. I started waking up later, as if waking up around noon is not worse as it is. Um, so that's one thing that happened. And in terms of radical honesty, the other thing that happened was uh, I had some unhealthy coping mechanisms. So I won't share the exact specific of what I was doing, but when I look back, the coping mechanisms were not healthy. Uh, but and this is not an excuse. Those were the coping mechanisms I was doing. It's not that that's all I knew. That's what I was doing at that time. And um, I don't know. And now that I look back again, I look at myself, the way I was acting in that situation. I was stuck there for many years. Um, I was stuck, and if now present state, and this is pretty recent because I wrapped up my major sessions like November last year. So like this is like 6 months earlier and before that time, right? And my mental health has actually been improving exponentially since November to now. As well as sleep. I'm on average, I'm waking up at 5:30 in the morning, not the 5:30 in the evening that may have happened in some instances in the past. But yeah, so those were the 2 things. The coping mechanisms were not healthy, and the sleep was really impacted. There are other um, things, like interpersonal dynamics, let's put it that way, which is something we all got to constantly work on anyways. Nobody's perfect, but they weren't like, I don't think, at least from a consistency perspective, in this case is the negative spiral, those were not as chronic. Some of them were bad, but they were few and far in between. But the sleep was a consistent negative pattern, and the coping mechanisms on some frequency, they were consistently happening. So yeah, so we watch out, like, give yourself, be mindful, have some grounding in place, clean the clutter around your environment. Don't spend time with people whose habits you're going to emulate, whatever it is. They smoke cigarettes, or I don't know, that didn't happen in my case, or what else, anything really that you don't want to emulate, you should not be spending time with those people. In fact, I would say on the extreme cases, it's okay to be alone for a little bit versus be around somebody and adopt their habits, and then, ask yourself the question, why is this not changing? So anyways, I'll leave it at that. I measure everything in spreadsheets. I got this from a blog post I read um, many years ago. I think going back 2014-ish. Something that serves me quite well. This is self, it kind of explains itself. I did mention my connection to the library. In addition to the library, I spend time in YouTube is a great platform for learning. Udemy, course in Udemy, MIT, OpenCourseWare has a lot of courses. I haven't spent a lot of time there, but I remember was how I started with the MOOCs, massive open online courses. And actually one of the courses I started taking was the Intro to Psych, which I barely went through 10-15% of, but other courses I've taken. So mostly books. I'd read books, and some books I read slowly, some books I can finish. And not to sound all that, like, if I like a book, I can finish it in 2 days if that's the only thing I'm doing. Like Mindset by Carol Dweck, I must have finished it over a span of 3 days. Start on a Friday. My daughter was not with me that weekend, and I think I finished it on the Sunday or early Monday morning. Identify your strengths and continue to work towards developing your skills. So I'm not going to speak too much about it, but the big portion of today's talk was here, investing in your mental health, as well here, talking to a practitioner regularly, evidence-based. So yeah, this is what I hit today. This is really what this video was about. And I think from my experience, I think I did a pretty thorough. This is not an exhaustive thing, like my morning routine and what you eat. All of this impacts your well-being. If you're eating shit food, excuse my language, then your mental health is going to be bad. If you're eating a lot of fast carbs, a lot of alcohol, abusing alcohol, or a lot of sugary drinks, a lot of red meat with tons of it's not lean, or a lot of red meat in general, lean or not. So the food you eat, it makes you as a person, and most of the energy goes to your brain anyway. So if you're going to eat bad food, that's what your brain is, fast carbs in general and sugar and trans fat are really bad for your body and your brain. And I think amongst those, fast carbs are like almost kind of like, I don't know what scale, like if you have like drugs, I don't know, I've never done drugs, so I don't know. I smoke weed. This is getting very personal. So I don't want to set bad example if my daughter starts watching this, but that's like a handful of times in my life. I'm not like now it's it's legalized actually. So, but yeah, like they say, to come back to the topic, fast carbs have the same impact that drugs have on your brain, but like on some lesser level. So I don't know if that's 100%, and this is probably 20-30%, but it's still equally bad. Like how how it fires the dopamine receptors, and this is why carbs are addictive. That's why you crave those things like French fries. But there's always these healthy alternatives, right? But yeah, this is like, I'm not gonna do the whole thing. My framework includes resiliency, mindset, belief or conviction in yourself, which you don't just repeat the mantras and the belief itself. It has to be grounded in something real and something with an anchor, and your anchors are through your actions and through the overall framework of how you enable all this. And there's other frameworks as well by Cal Newport. Talk about the environment, talk about designing your life with conscious intent, which I'm going to start getting into with help from others, mostly books, some virtual teas. I don't know these individuals personally, but I've been in their company. Let's put it that way. There are many teachers in that domain. There's some of my favorites: Jack Canfield, Brian Tracy. If you talk to me regularly, I'm like, I would bring something related, something that Brian Tracy said often. there are many teachers. Aisha Bursell has the Design Your Life book. I've started, I'm going to go through it. There's Shakti Gawain from Creative Visualization. There's, there's so many individuals. What's the guy's name? The 5 a.m. club guy, something Sharma. Anyways, there's so many teachers, right? It's really the teacher, and this is not an exhaustive list. There are other teachers I've had, not directly. I never met any one of these individuals directly, face to face. Brendan Burchard. Man, there are so many teachers, but specific to the topic, man, I am so grateful to my therapist, because my therapist is a wonderful person, and therapy really helped me. It changed my life. It changed my life. I believe I guess I can stop sharing and wrap up this video, but I believe I'm more calm as a person. I'm more calm, and I have peace, and I have peace of mind, and nobody's perfect, so I'm not perfect, but I just have a much more grounded approach, I think, to how I live life. And I've been sitting too long, so I gotta stretch it a little bit. But yeah, therapy really changed my life, and it put me on a different path. Life has its ups and downs. I've had a very good life. I started working when I was less than 18 years old, and I've been very fortunate to work in tech, and not as a developer or a designer, but I've just been very fortunate to be around in a good environment, around good people, and we all make mistakes. I made mistakes too. I talk about these openly. I took some of my relationships in a professional sense for granted, and maybe personal as well. So, and there's always good ways to let go, and I may not have done that in some of these situations, but this is I'm not gonna do an exhaustive talk here. Our psychology is made up of so many different things, and ego is a big part of that as well. I don't know how much of our ego drives, depends on the person, but how much of your ego drives your overall sense of being. But I think life's very short. I believe this is the only life. Maybe my patterns are going to get recreated in some other universe, or some other reality. I don't know, right? I don't even know if that person's going to be me, or if it's going to be me, or if it's not going to be me. That's the philosophical question. So I don't. That's a different topic. But what I'm saying right now is, this is the only life, and this is the only life we get every day. Every day is a gift. Every day is a good day. It's on my cup. And gotta exercise, gotta have good relationships, gotta dance, gotta enjoy life. And if something's standing in the way of you enjoying your life, you gotta make the call. It's really simple. Okay, I think that's the best way to wrap up this video. If you loved yourself, what would you do? Have a nice day. I hope this was useful. I hope this was useful to somebody who may be watching this. I didn't intend the video is going to be that long, but I'm very easy to get a hold of. But remember, I cannot solve your problems. In fact, I'm not in a capacity to solve your problems. So you know what you need to do. Make the call. All right. But if there's something I should have covered, do let me know. I'm easy to find on the web. Have a nice day. Thank you so much for watching.